Hey guys, Matt here. And a lot of people recently have been asking me ever since we got the announcement for the upcoming Path of Exile events what build I'll be playing, and this is the build that I settled on. This is a cold damage over time Slinger, which is also an occultist. So we go occultist because unlike the more tanky version, which would be a trickster, we get access to good old pops from Profane Bloom, which gives us incredibly good clear speed. We get access to dual cursing as well, and we also get access to cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen. If you want to go for a more defensive ascendancy, you can go Val Bastion instead of Malediction. If you play hardcore or something like that, this will make you immune to stuns as well, at least on the low life version of the build. Now this build starts off as a life build, and it is one of the smoothest league starting build I've actually played. I leveled it in a league start scenario the other day, and it was actually a breeze from beginning to end. We basically one-shot everything. This build can easily get to maps in 4 hours or whatever the other speed builds are taking, and it's also very, very easy because it's a one-button build, unlike, for example, the Cremation build or the current meta bonk build, which is the Earth Shatter or Ground Slam builds. This is a one-button build. All you have to do is hold down mouse button and then throw some spells through the usage of Frenzy, and once in a while you can also always Flame Dash as well to pop your Arcane Surge. But yeah, so I'll be going in the POB, showing you guys what I've prepared in terms of POB, how to level the build, all that good stuff. But before that, I want to quickly showcase a map. So this is a Maze of the Minotaur. This should not be a problem for this build. The problem with Slinger builds typically is that it lacks single target damage. That has been historically the biggest issue with this build, is the lack of single target. But the Cold Dot does a lot better than other Slinger builds when it comes to single target through the usage of Cold Snap, Vortex, and Creeping Frost, all stacking on top of each other to really, really hit the enemies with some pretty solid debuffs. So the build is also fairly tanky through the usage of some Recover Life on Kill, or ES on Kill in this case, but Life on Kill for the life version, through the usage of a Cinder Swallow and some good old Brush with Death. So with a life or an ES pool of 6.5k on my current investment, which is about 100 Exalt without a Headhunter, we are pretty good to go, and nothing really matters when it comes to survivability. We're pretty good unless we take a big hit, which one-shots us. So where this build falls short is essentially 100% Delirious map. If you talk about the Delirium Mirror, Cyrus Awakener level 8, Simulacrum farming, those are all things that even the most budget low life version, which will be the second link in the description, which will be the 25 Exalt budget POB for the low life version of the build, that version will clear all that content no problem. The live version will fall short a little bit in Simulacrums for the last couple waves, and will also fall short when it comes to the Delirium Mirror if you're doing T17s. If you're doing anything below T17s, it will still do just fine on a budget of literally nothing, because the life-based version is all just random pieces of gear picked up on the ground, a 1 Chaos Rhyme Gaze, no enchant required on the life base either, and literally just a bunch of garbage rares is what I used to be able to kill even Awakener level 8 Cyrus on a 5 link on a Carcass Jack, which gives us a pseudo 6 link, if you will, through the area damage. But overall, the life-based version is very good for a build that can cost you less than a handful of exalts, and allow you to farm your way into the low life version. And the low life version can actually be scaled all the way up to a few hundred exalts, and that version of the build does about 4 times more damage than I currently do, and I'm about to showcase how much damage that does. So I'll go ahead and pop the Delirium Mirror, because why not? And I'll go ahead and showcase what the clear looks like. So I'm mostly just going to go straight for the boss room. We're pretty much just one-shotting everything anyway, so we don't really have to wait for anything. You can also pop your Val Cold Snap for clearing. You'll see this little white circle around my entire character. That is Val Cold Snap doing its thing, which helps a fair bit. Not so much with single target damage, but more so with clearing. So let's get this map out of the way, and then we'll hop into the POB section of the build, because you guys will have seen how the build functions and whatnot. So this is a Minotaur, though, which is a fairly tanky boss. On top of the Delirium Mirror, that might make for a very tanky boy. And we also have a Metamorph as part of this map, so we might have access to some pretty tanky boys at the end of this map, which might just not go down too quickly. Because the biggest problem with this build by far is going to be the single target when it comes to very endgame content. And what I mean by that is not things like Awakener 8 Cyrus. That's pretty easy. But for example, a Minotaur boss at the end of a Delirium Mirror can be pretty tanky. And especially if there's a Metamorph on top of it. But let's go ahead and try it out before we really worry too much about it and see how it feels. So this is how that feels. As expected, it's a little bit tanky. Nothing we can't deal with, though. Actually, he's going down fairly quickly, a lot faster than I thought it was. If this was a regular Minotaur, he would already have been dead a while ago. But because of the fact that, he's got Delirium influence and all that good stuff. This was also a % life, I believe, on the map. Oh, so it's kind of hard to see with the Delirium what's going on my screen. And it looks like I'm under a bunch of rocks. But still not too big of an issue. He died within a respectable amount of time, given the fact that he was under the influence of Delirium, and he was corrupted as well in a 138 quantity map, so a fairly tanky map as well. So now that I've showcased the build, what it looks like, what the damage looks like, that boss actually was literally tankier than Cyrus Awakener level 8, which is pretty funny. Let's go ahead and jump into the POB. There will be a few different links in the description of the video. The first link is going to be a leveling POB. The leveling POB includes all the leveling trees, which will take you by the hand from level 1 all the way up to level 89, as you can see over here, from level 1 to level 89 in increments of 10 to 20 levels. So that will make sure that you don't have to worry about anything when it comes to leveling. Once you get to level 89 and you have a little bit more currency is when we are going to anoint Breath of the Rime to get all of those good little passive points back. And this is the anoint Breath of the Rime passive tree. That version is a lot more tanky because we grab Arcane Swiftness, Arcane Guardian, as well as Mystic Bulwark, which makes us, which gives us pretty much block cap and nearly spell block cap. If we were to craft 5% spell block on our shield, which is a very early craft that you get access to, even in solo self-found, you would get 66% spell block, so you're nearly block and spell block capped with the uses of Glancing Blows, which is pretty good. For even more defense, you go Vile Bastion and get yourself immune to stuns while you have Energy Shield, but this is the live version, so you won't always have full Energy Shield. Then we also have the Respect to Low Life tree. This is also a level 89 or 87 tree, so a fairly low level tree. But that is what that tree looks like. We are grabbing as much damage as possible. All the, the damage over time. We're grabbing a bunch of Energy Shield all over the place. And one thing that we grab a lot of is also mana reserved, or less mana reserved. And the reason for that is because Spellslinger reserves mana. And if you want to be able to use a triple Spellslinger setup, which is what we do, it requires quite a bit of mana reserved on the tree. Or at least, this 4% no next influence, as well as the entirety of sovereignty, is all that's required to be able to run the build. Next is going to be another POB, which is the budget 25 exile version. This is what I started off as when I switched over to low life. You could even do cheaper than that, but that's about the budget that this build had. And most of that was through different rares. Now, this is not actually what I paid for this build. I paid significantly less, but the 25x budget was considering this would be a league start scenario where a 6-link Shavs would cost you over 10 exalts. A Presence of Chiyula would be about 4 exalts. So if you were to remake this exact POB at the moment, it would actually cost you more, around 10 exalts. So it would be a lot cheaper because most of these items are actually dirt cheap. And this is going to be that POB. It does 1.6 million DPS, so it's got very respectable Sire's DPS. Now, of course, this is a little bit unfair because the reality is that you do not have Valor F for Sire's, so it's more like 1.2 million. But this is purely off of Vortex. It doesn't consider Creeping Frost or Cold Snap and whatnot. So we do quite a bit more damage than that. Not quite twice as much, though. And this is a very, very budget version. Like, literally as budget as it gets when it comes to swapping over to low life. As I said, probably less than 10 Exalt if you were to redo it right now. And finally, there will be one more link in the description, which is going to be for the people who want to try to push this build pretty far. And that is going to be a budget of about 200 to 300 exalts. It really depends what you get most of these items for. The reality, though, is that this league is getting pretty old, so most of these items are either not available or the people who have them are offline and have been offline for a while. But as you can see, this build actually does 5.6 million damage. Now, this is considering Valor F, so it's more like 4.4 million damage, and that is only off of Vortex. So we can push this build to be capable of doing as high as even 100% Delirious T19s if you really want to invest heavily into the builds. And this is a level 97 tree, though. So quite a bit higher on the levels, but that is to be expected when we are going with the Cluster Jewel route and whatnot, trying to get as much ES as possible. So that is going to be that. I believe this doesn't even have a unset ring, which means it doesn't even have discipline in the build. So you can actually push the build to 8 to 9k energy shield if you had truly, truly godly gear. Things that you would have in Harvest that are very hard to get nowadays, but still. And there's one last thing I want to talk about, which I completely forgot, and that on the leveling POB, if you go under skills, you'll see that there are no skills. There are also no real amount of items except for the baseline items for going low life, which is a Chayula Amulet, Rhyme Gaze, Prism Guardian Shavs. And Rhyme Gaze could actually be changed for Crown of the Inward Eye for a lot more damage. Crown of the Inward Eye is actually pretty insane for damage. But you know, Rhyme Gaze is a good alternative if you don't have an enchant on your Crown of the Inward Eye. Rhyme Gaze is going to be quite a bit better because the enchants are also a lot cheaper. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the notes section. I added basically a guide that will take you by the hand from level 1 all the way to the complete end game, and even in your transition to low life. In the notes section, as well as at the bottom, there are some different information about ascendancy points, some different information about helmet enchants, cluster jewel usage, etc., etc. So this is all you need basically in terms of information to take the build from the very beginning of the game all the way to the complete end game. All your different links and whatnot. I could have put it in the skill gems, but it would have been completely messy. So instead, I went with the notes as that was recommended in the last build guide that I made, which had a leveling tree. So hopefully this is enough information and resources for the people who want to try out this build. It is a very, very strong league starter, like I mentioned earlier. And also, this is also a pretty decent delving build. The current version that I have, which is worth about 100 exalts, has actually pushed depths all the way up to 2,500, which I've done on stream. So while it's not easy to delve at 1.5k with only 100 investment, it is doable. But nodes anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 were actually a breeze for this build, which was very, very impressive to say the least, because most builds kind of start getting stuck around 500 to 600. So this build was able to push it all very, very deep for how much investment I have on it. The live version of the build, though, does significantly less damage, about half the damage on the very, very low investment, which, like I said earlier, is basically free because it's all just random rares, that you pick up on the ground for the live version, which you'll see in the POB as well. That version, I'm not sure how it would fare in Delve, but I'll be trying it out for the Endless Delve event because I feel like, unlike most other builds nowadays, which require either crafting or influence items, this build completely doesn't, and can actually push fairly deep, given that you have the required mechanics. So that's pretty much all I had to say about this build. Before I go, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporter over on Patreon: Mario, Luro, Gaikona, Cluzy, Dino, Born to Rain, Scott, Kevin, Casticus, and Axel. Huge thank you to you guys for your support, as well as, of course, anybody else who wishes to remain anonymous, and anybody else who has supported me in the past. Hopefully you guys enjoy the build, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.